Hello, Erin from Morehouse Farm here with today's knitting tip, which is how to do Judy's Magic Cast On. This is a great cast on that's usually used for the toe of a sock when you're working from the toe up, but our friend Corrado Lark designed this hat called Top Down Hatlan with Judy's Magic Cast On to cast on at the crown and then work our way around the entire hat down to the bottom, which I think is a great way to do it because you can try it on as you go. And then you can stop short if you want it to be more fitted or add more length if you want it to be a floppier hat. So in order to do this, you're going to need double pointed needles or a really long circular for magic loop, whichever you like. And you're going to hold the needles pointed towards your left. Now you're going to grab your yarn, and in this case we're working with Morehouse Merino lace knit double, so we got a nice color combination going. We're going to make a slip knot, which is just wrapping the yarn around our finger and then pulling the end through in a loop, so not all the way through, but that gives you a nice slip knot. Now, putting these two needles together, I'm going to make sure that I'm separating the tail towards the top and the working yarn towards the bottom, okay? And that's going to give me the setup in order to be able to wrap the top yarn around the bottom needle and the bottom yarn around the top needle by moving these needles. It sounds confusing, but once you get the hang of it and the rhythm going, it's going to be working just fine. So we've got a stitch on the bottom needle. We want to run around the top needle, which means we need to go down and around the top needle and bring the yarn in between them. See how that creates a stitch? And that's number 2. The slip knot counts as 1. This is number 2. So now we need to bring the bottom needle up to the top in order to make a second stitch on that needle, okay? And we'll keep going. So bring the bottom needles down and the yarn comes up underneath and then down between. To get one on the bottom needle, we move it up, grab the top yarn and bring it over the top and in between. Same thing with the top needle and the bottom yarn, bottom needle and the top yarn. And really you're just going from the outside, right, top or bottom, into the middle in order to get the correct number of stitches. And notice I didn't really need a very long tail in order to make this happen. And when I get to the right number of stitches, of course your pattern will tell you how many that is, you can stop. Just make sure you've got the right number or the even number on both. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I need one more on the top and then I'm good to go. All right, so there are my stitches. Now, I would normally turn this towards the right in order to start working Judy's Magic Cast On, and I'd need to make sure that I've got my tail wrapped around my working yarn like so in order to make this first stitch, which is the last one that I just cast on, stick. Right? If it's not wrapped around, that's going to be loose and flopping around and come out. But the twist for Top Down Hatlan is that you actually want to turn the needles over towards you because you want to see this garter stitch ridge. See how that shows up at the top of the hat? Just gives it a little bit more character. Of course, you can go either way that you like for your own hat, but here's how it's written in the pattern. So in order to do this, we've now got our stitches. Right? We want to make sure we have the right number here. So that's where this part becomes really important. The working yarn is going to be in the middle, as is the tail. And I'm pulling them both down just to make sure that I've got the tail wrapped around enough so that this last stitch doesn't come loose. So I'm going to pull out my bottom needle and I'm going to start knitting, making sure I've got the working yarn, not the tail, right? Separate them out. And if you need to hold that guy down out of the way with your other fingers, that's okay. Right? Start knitting, okay? And pull that through. There's one. Now we can start knitting on the second one. And you'll notice I'm really knitting through the back loop here because of the way the stitches are positioned. Right? Now knitters always talk about a back loop and a front loop, and they're talking about where on the needle those legs are. You've heard me talk before about a right leg and a left leg. If you work through the back loop in this case, you're not going to be twisting the stitches because that right leg is already towards the back. if it was positioned on the needle in the normal direction, which I'll show you when we get around to the other side, then indeed it would twist the stitch. But right now, it's not going to because of the way this particular cast on laid the needle, or laid the yarn on the needle on this side. Okay, so I've gotten to the end of the first side, which means now I need to turn it. I'm going to pull that needle out and I'm going to slide the other one down and in. That's how I'm going to get positioned for the next side. And here I go. And this is what I meant about, see how this right leg in the front is in the front here? It's a little bit tighter. That's what I'm talking about in order to knit and not twist the stitches. Okay, so that right leg, if you can see it right there, is to the front of the needle this time. So I'm knitting through the front of the stitch, but it's still the right leg going to the right side in order to make sure that the stitch is not twisted. And I'll continue around in this manner, increasing as the pattern calls for. And that's how I'm going to be working in the round. All right. Happy knitting from Morehouse Farm.